I am travelling to London tomorrow morning, so I won't be able to do a London session recap phase. But I'll try my best to get the markups and all done, but I just won't have the equipment to do a recap. So I thought I would do a New York recap for today, just to sort of make sure you're getting your money worth for the week. So we'll just start with the EU again. We've been familiar with it all week, basically in this pullback phase, following the boss, the break of structure, very corrective push up, struggling to break the highs. So essentially knew it was possible that we could come up and mitigate the EQ of the leg, that nice supply zone there. But then just given how corrective the overall pullback has been, it wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility the price could just tank out doing that. So on the daily, it's indecisive, could go either way, which sort of emanates through all the time frames currently. So yeah, it could have went either way. I try my best to stay neutral and definitely not trying to force anything. And the 4 hour, again, it's pretty confusing. It's obviously bearish overall. We're in the pullback phase as well, so obviously knew it was a possibility of mitigating the EQ of the leg. We have a nice 4 hour POI nested within the daily there. We had the bullish IBOS, so this gave us a sort of demand range in green, and then the extreme demand within that held. So we pushed up and then we mitigated this supply zone. Obviously it's a good supply zone, it was formed through sweep liquidity and mitigated this supply here, but obviously it only caused a shock. And personally I would usually put more precedence on internal structure rather than fractal structure, so I was thinking, again, nothing massively clear, but overall I probably favour buys, sort of the continuation of the bullish internal trend to probably run the weak internal high and sort of mitigate up here. But obviously price doesn't have to do anything, but you can see pretty much all week we've just been ranging around the EQ of the internal leg, as I've sort of covered. So just clear indecision, like every time price sort of takes a high it retraces, just messy, just not optimal trading conditions, which I'm sure you have noticed. It's been a very sort of tricky quiet week on the low, on the M15, the M1, looking for entries and stuff. So yeah, that sort of explains why. So pretty much indecision on the 4 hour, probably favoured buys to run the weak internal high and mitigate that, but again didn't have to do that. M15 then, coming into New York, pretty much here. So we had taken out this sort of little range here. I was like a bullish II boss, but then it turned that we mitigated basically the M15 supply within this larger range and continued bearish. So obviously a larger internal is bullish following this IBOS here, but then obviously we had a bearish IBOS yesterday, so it's like when prices sort of, when the internal trend sort of constantly changing, it's just, again, it's a sign of indecision. And then you could see we had these sort of supply ranges being respected, so it was possible that these would just sustain and that basically the M15 internal would switch bearish again in line with the swing trend, because obviously this is the strong M15 high and we had mitigated the M15 supply at the extreme. So coming in, I was waiting to see if we would get a close below the internal low at the point, which would obviously give us this protected internal leg to trade from. Didn't quite get the close below, but we still had this flip zone. You can see it reacted to that wick and mitigated the extreme as well, so it was a decent POI. Personally, I had mine refined to the pivot, which means I missed a trade in here. In my plan, I prefer to trade from a pivot POI, but I will trade from the range if it sets up pretty clean. But I'll just play it forward here. See, we didn't get the close below, we mitigated this sort of wick here, but overall the supply range has been respected, so I'm still happy enough to look for an entry. I'll just drop down to that one, show you this here. So you can see we came into the range, we liquidated these sort of equal highs here, and then I'll just play it on. Sorry, trading views on a go slow. So yeah, we got the liquidation, the mitigation of the range, mitigated this sort of little M1, unmitigated M1 POI within it too, so which is another added confidence factor. So then got the bearish chalk there, came into this sort of wick demand and then got the decent reaction. Didn't take out the high, so obviously at this point you're waiting for the reaction to fail, which is here. And we only wicked it, so if you need a candle close for failed reaction, then that's not a valid entry for you. And then you could have obviously entered on the extreme. Yeah, 2 pip stop sort of on the EQ would have got you tagged, and then it played out quite nicely. And so yeah, that was the only potential entry. I missed it because I was waiting on the pivot, and it depends. If you're happy to take a range, it's valid, and if you don't need a candle closure for failed reaction, it's valid. To just take it based off that chalk, again, you could enter there. Sorry, you could enter just on the extreme if you want, but personally that's a bit too aggressive for me coming off the range. I ideally wanted to see demand fail, which is where failed reaction comes in. Go back to the M15 now. So after that there, the POI that I mostly wanted to buy from was here, purely because it swept liquidity. It was a flip zone because it flipped that supply. It had a bit of inducement in front of it with that low, and it mitigated the extreme, and it was nested in the 4-hour demand. So that was the one that I sort of wanted to get an entry from. We came into it with a lot of momentum, and then basically just a bit of a reaction, and then we blew down. I'll show you this on the M1 in a second. There was no chalk running. You can see basically came in, and then obviously that was the chalk line. So no chalk, pretty much just ranged, and eventually mitigated that range there, and kept tanking. So there's no entry there on it. The larger internal was still bullish, and it was in 4-hour demand, so it was valid to drop to M1 there. But yeah, given the momentum, it was quite aggressive to do that. And then you can see eventually with the news announcement at 3, I think it was, yeah, we basically got the close below. So now the M15 internal is switched bearish again. So yeah, swing and bearish are aligned again, a lot of momentum to the downside. So at this point, you're looking, coming into London, that we'll be able to target basically this week M15 low and basically all that liquidity. This is the 4-hour low. So yeah, sells are looking good now, but then given how indecisive everything's been over the last few days, it wouldn't surprise me if we just tanked the upside again. But yeah, that's M15, just very indecisive price action. Didn't know which way I wanted to go, just messy price action. Just I was personally happy to sit in my hands all week and take nothing. So that's personally how I approached it. Just wait for preserved capital and wait for optimal conditions for the strategy. But yeah, there's a lot to learn this week, you know. If you struggled this week, you know, you took a few losses, you didn't catch on, whatever, you're feeling frustrated, like, look, these weeks happen when you're a trader. The important thing is to learn from it, recognise what were the characteristics of the conditions that made this week not good for the strategy. And again, it's the indecisiveness on the 4-hour, on the and the daily. You know, the optimal conditions are whenever you've sort of, you know, whenever everything's lined up and, you know, you're playing the bullish pullback in the daily and the 4-hour by following the bullish M15 trend or whatever. They're the optimal conditions. So I'll share my markups in the morning anyway, sort of see how things are looking coming into London tomorrow. But yeah, that's New York. One potential trade that I missed because I was waiting for the pivot, and then that was that. AU, coming into the session, I sort of favoured buys, to be honest. Had this bearish break of structure, so I was thinking that there's a good chance we were going to come up and mitigate supply in the premium on the 4-hour and keep tanking, but we had mitigated this little wick here, which obviously it's within the previous range. So while we didn't mitigate the EQ, we did mitigate the range, so you had to keep that in mind. Yeah, so overall favourite buys potentially up to here, but knew everything was bearish overall, and wasn't completely ruling out sells either. But the M15 then, there was a couple of potential entries that I personally didn't take. You can see had the bullish M15 shock this morning, was looking to maybe pull back into here to look for a buy, but obviously we didn't do that. We mitigated, basically you can see, again it's not the cleanest, but there is clearly supply within that range. It's the 4-hour range as well, so we mitigated that there. It was within, you can see, multiple ranges. Didn't quite mitigate the EQ of the leg. The EQ was a bit higher, but you can see, look, we mitigated this range, which are all basically higher time frame zones. So you can see we did mitigate all those ranges, and then we got the bearish chalk there. So at this point, everything was aligned bearish. Swing was bearish, internal was bearish, and fractal was bearish. So I was looking for price to potentially pull back into the supply to look for a sell. Now, it's not the best supply. It didn't sweep liquidity. It had no inducement in front of it. You can see it's just like pretty much a wide open space. And then we had like a pretty much a V-shaped recovery into it. So it wasn't my favourite zone of all time, but it made sense relative to all the, you know, the market structure, supply and demand, etc., etc. So it made sense. And there was a potential entry within it, but it was a no tag. I'll just show you it now. It was a pretty clean entry model, to be honest. See, we came in, you can see the momentum there in the M1. Then we had a bit of a pause, swept that high, pushed down. Now, that's not the best liquidation in the world, particularly considering you can see the wide open space in the M1. There's no inducement there. But it takes out a high, so it is a valid liquidation. But you can see it was just pretty much a sideways correction. It didn't really take out any structure, so it's not the strongest liquidation in the world. But then you can see you got the V-shaped recovery, basically pushed up, mitigated the M1 extreme, and then retraced straight away. So that was nice. And then we got the picture perfect flip, reacted to that demand, swept liquidity behind the high, and then got the V-shaped recovery. So then I had my entry there on the extreme with a 2-pip stop, but obviously it didn't tag. This was another potential entry here where swept liquidity, so it's a decent enough place to enter. Personally, it's not really my style to just enter an M1 POI like that, particularly with the extreme unmitigated price. Could have easily come up there, but yeah, it was valid. I personally refined it to the 30S because you can see that was quite a large candle, and you wouldn't have been tagged with a 2-pip stop, I don't think. So if you're strict with your stop, yeah, you probably wouldn't have been tagged. But again, it was valid. I think I saw people talking about this entry here. Not my style at all. Tons of liquidity sitting behind there. Yes, price closed below this low, but did sweep liquidity there, but that's just not my edge at all. At this point as well, you're buying pretty much in the EQ of the range. So yeah, more than 90% of my trades are the basic entry model from M15 POIs. Like when you start trying to pick an M1 POI in the middle of the range, even when you stack sort of the confidence is in your favour, it's just not my edge. I'm just happy to stick to the M15 POIs, but again, I can see why you would take that if it fits your plan, great, but just too aggressive for me. And then in the M15 you can see swept the weak internal low and then got the retrace, but then looks like we're tanking again, having mitigated the inside bar there. So yeah, one no tag. Was pretty clean entry model. Wasn't the biggest fan of the POI, but it made sense relative to everything. And then obviously could have targeted the weak internal low for a nice bit of profit, but didn't work out in this occasion. Another potential couple of entries in the M1 that I personally didn't take. This one is sort of decent enough because the swap liquidity, etc., is pretty clear zone. It's in the premium. This, like, if you just look at, if you take this as sort of your internal range, it's in the premium. It's like that. That's where you want to be. You want to be entering up here. You don't really want to start entering around the EQ because this is where price has a tendency to do that, where it's easy to get chopped out. So that's personally how I trade. But as I say, I just stick to the basic entry model 90% of the time. Yeah, so that's EU and AU. No trades in EU and one no tag in AU. So as I said, I'm travelling tomorrow, so I'll still be online, but I'll sort of have limited access to stuff. But I'll do my best to keep on top of everything, and I'm sure Tomas and the experienced students, etc., will be on hand to help you if you have any problems. So thanks very much, guys, and I'll chat to you soon. Bye.